everyone, and welcome back to Russell's Movie Reviews, and welcome back to the first annual Halloween special. Last week I discussed John Carpenter's The Thing, and you guys already know I love that movie. It's my favorite horror movie of all time. The perfect horror movie in my opinion. And today I will be discussing another horror Oh, well, The Thing wasn't really sci-fi, but will be discussing a horror sci-fi film that could compete as best horror movie with The Thing, along with its sequel. And as you guys can tell by the title and the thumbnail, today I will be reviewing Alien, released in 1979. Um, I just want to talk really quickly about The Thing, and how that review went. Um, I really appreciate you guys watching that one because it was honestly really fun to make and watch because obviously now it's my favorite horror movie of all time. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching it. Because I put a lot of research and effort into making that video, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for watching it. Um, but anyway, let's get on to Alien. Um, Now really quickly before I actually start talking about Alien as a whole, I wanted to discuss because I know people are going to be asking me in the comments if I didn't mention this. Which version of Alien did I watch? And this kind of will go for all four Alien movies, cause every single Alien movie, at least the four core Alien movies, they all have two different versions of them. For example, Alien. It has the regular theatrical cut from 1979 and also the director's cut that came out in 2003 to celebrate the 25th anniversary. Um, which one did I watch for this review? I watched the director's cut for this. Just kind of um just to kind of point out the and talk about the actual deleted changes between the theatrical and director's cut, and because I have actually watched the director's cut and actually seen them for myself. Um, I will be discussing the differences later on in the video. But I just want to mention that right now that I did watch the director's cut for this review. Um, but anyway, let's get on to the review. So this was Alien was released on May 25th of 1979 with a budget of $11 million. Domestically, it made over 80 million, and worldwide, it made over 108 million. So this movie was a success. Um, and obviously this was directed by Ridley Scott, who I really only recognize besides from Alien as the director of Blade Runner, which was a massive box office bomb back when it was originally released in 1982, but has gone on to be one of the best sci-fi films ever made. Will I be talking about Blade Runner in the future? Most likely. I will be talking about that in the near future. But he also went on to direct Prometheus and Alien Covenant, which we do not discuss. Um, but anyway, let's get on to the plot. So, in deep space, the crew of the commercial starship Nostromo is awakened from their cryo-sleep capsules halfway through their journey home to investigate a distress call from an alien vessel. The terror begins when the crew encounters a nest of eggs inside the alien ship. An organism from inside an egg of the alien ship leaps out and attaches itself to one of the crew, causing him to fall into a coma. The crew quickly realize that the alien's life cycle has just begun. Um, but yeah, as I want to state this really quick. I love this movie. It is one of the best horror movies ever made. Is it the best? No, I still think it's John Carpenter's The Thing. But I still think it's up there in my top 5 best horror movies ever made. Um, do I think it's better than its sequels? No, well, I don't know because I haven't watched any of the sequels. But I probably will at some point. Um, but but yeah, I personally really enjoyed my experience with watching Alien. Which by the way, I watched this on the 2011 Blu-ray because so far on Blu-ray it had 3 separate releases. It had the standard 2011 release, which is came with both versions. There was a 35th anniversary edition. Um, that came in a nice box that kind of actually sort of resembled the Aliens box that I do have, and it's in my collection. Um, but I obviously didn't pull it out for this review. And now it currently has a 4K release. Will there be 4K releases for the rest of the Alien films? It is. I don't honestly know yet. Um, I guess it just depends on the sale of Alien. Kind of like how when Superman the movie came out, people were asking, well, are they going to do 4K transfers of the rest of them? I see it as kind of like it depends on whether the the first movie does well. But really, let's talk about the cast. We obviously have Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, Ellen Brody. I'm thinking of Jaws all over again. Um, Ellen Ripley is the main star of this movie and will be the main star for all 4 consecutive Alien movies. Um, but originally Ripley was supposed to be a male lead. Um, and they obviously changed it to be a female. But when they originally changed it to be a female, they actually cast Veronica Cartwright as Ripley. Um, but it was when they saw Sigourney Weaver screen test for Ripley, they were like, "No, you are Ripley." Um, and Veronica Cartwright would not get the role of Ellen Ripley, but she will get the role of another character that I will be mentioning very soon. And surprisingly, this was Sigourney Weaver's first acting. Like this was Sigourney Weaver's first movie, which usually kind of spells like if this is your first acting gig, it's most likely gonna be terrible. But no, she actually manages to hold it together very well. And not like lose control, and just make your performance into a bad one, which I do appreciate and do accommodate that. We have Tom Skerritt as Dallas, who is the ship captain. Um, I don't really recognize Tom Skerritt from anything else besides the first Alien. Um, but he does pull off a very good performance in this. We have John Hurt as Kane. The only other thing I recognized John Hurt from was The Elephant Man, directed by David Lynch. Oh, David Lynch. We have Veronica Cartwright as Lambert, who, if you guys may remember from a previous episode of the series, I believe from earlier in season 2, um, you guys may remember that Veronica Cartwright was a little girl when she was cast in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Yes, she was actually in The Birds. I believe she was the little girl of the main kind of family that's introduced in the movie. Um, but I was like, wow, that little girl went from being attacked by birds to being attacked by an alien basically 16 years later. Oh boy. We have Ian Holm as Ash, who is the science officer, who eventually turns out to be an android. Which I will actually be talking about later as part of my favorite scenes which I guess spoilers, but really any of my reviews are, if you're going into any of my reviews with spoilers, um, which like I don't know what you're expecting, but I don't know. I don't really recognize Ian Holm from anything. Apparently, he was a theater actor that had some um movie roles here and there. But yeah, this is really the only thing I recognize Ian Holm from. Yaphet plays Parker, who is one of the two ship mechanics. Now, I recognize Yaphet from a number of films, including the James Bond film Live and Let Die, which, if you guys are James Bond fanatics, was the first film to have Roger Moore as James Bond. Um, he played the villain in that film, and he played Arnold's friend in The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he pulls off a very good role in this. And I was surprised that she was like, okay, in 1973, you played the villain in Live and Let Die, and then 6 years later, you went on to be one of the main characters in a horror movie. And you're actually one of the last people to actually, one of the last three that eventually goes into like the last 30 minutes of the movie. Um, we have Harry Dean Stanton as Brett. The only other sort of film I recognize him from was Escape from New York, directed by John Carpenter. Um, and those are our core six or seven members of the Nostromo. Um, which I guess this was the first film to kind of coin the phrase "truckers in space," because they really just seemed like humans working at an office or like a gas station or something, because they just seem like so used to the ship at this point. Sorry if I'm yawning a lot during this video. It's like kind of late when I'm recording this and obviously uploading it. Um, but yeah, that's how this was the first film to kind of coin the phrase "truckers in space." Um, we have Helen Horton, um, as Mother, the ship's computer. Um, which I think the only time you really hear her voice is when the self-destruct is going on at the end of the film. Um, and finally we have Balaji Badeo as the alien itself, who basically plays the alien inside the actual costume. Um, and it's like so many of these actors are able to withstand like the heat of these costumes, like obviously for example Balaji Badeo for the alien for this film, and then you have the guy who played who was in the Predator costume for a Predator. And it's just crazy that people could withstand the heat and like are able to do this. Um, um, I guess to really quick talk about the fun fact that or two fun facts that I have. Well, actually, I'll mention the second fun fact later on when I'm discussing the differences. But I guess for now, my fun fact for this movie is that did you know that I mean, everyone, really quickly, everyone knows the chest burster scene from this film. It's one of the most iconic scenes from any horror movie. Um, but when they went to go and film the scene of the chest burster, the actors knew that there was going to be a chest burster coming out because it was in the script, and they obviously set up the rig and all that sort of stuff. But they were never told that there was gonna be gushing blood coming out of Kane's stomach when this thing comes out. So the when the chest burster comes out, everyone is in total shock. Obviously, for the film, but it was genuine terror on their faces. Um, and and yeah, and apparently a stream of fake blood. Obviously, it wasn't real blood. Apparently, a stream of fake blood shot towards Veronica Cartwright, and she fell over in hysterics. Um, if you actually look at, I believe there are bloopers in this. Um, I believe, I'm not sure. Um, I know like one of the, I think if you get like the quadrilogy box set, I think one of the documentaries for Alien kind of goes more into depth about that. Uh, but yeah, but really quickly before I start going on to my favorite scenes and the differences between the two different cuts, and obviously my final rating for the film, I want to talk about the score. Um, and the score was done by Jerry Goldsmith, who is one of the legends of film composing, right next to John Williams, um, who you guys may remember as doing the scores for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek V, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis. But he also did other films, including Supergirl, um, also including this film, and Psycho 2. And the score they did for this film is absolutely fantastic. Apparently, for the actual final cut of the film, they apparently took some tracks um, from another film that Goldsmith composed for, and put that into the film. Um, so not all of Jerry Goldsmith's work. Well, I mean, obviously with any score, any movie score, not all of the music is gonna be able to fit in the movie, but a lot of actual score that was done for this movie was cut out and replaced um, was either just removed entirely or it was replaced by um, scores from other Jerry Goldsmith movies. Um, you can find the soundtrack. I believe if you go to Entrada Records, there is a 2 CD set um, there for a good reasonable price. But if you um, besides that, if you don't want to actually go and um, go and get the soundtrack, there is isolated versions of the score, not only for the final theatrical, not for the original theatrical. Actually, let me look at it really quick. There's the final theatrical isolated score by Jerry Goldsmith, along with the composer's original isolated score. Um, so they're basically two separate soundtrack uh, tracks in the special features. Um, and I think the score for this film, like I said before, is amazing. Um, but again, it's my personal opinion. You guys may hate the score. If you guys personally have seen the movie, put a comment down below. Um, and yeah. Um, so yeah. Now we're gonna talk about what's probably gonna take up a good chunk of this video. The main differences between the theatrical cut and the extended cut or the director's cut. Um, like I said before, the original theatrical cut was obviously released in 1979 and was a great groundbreaking hit. And for the 25th anniversary in 2003, Ridley Scott made a director's cut for a limited theatrical release before putting it onto several home media releases. And now, any version now of you find of Alien will have not only the original theatrical cut, but also the director's cut. Um, and I say the director's cut is actually a minute shorter than the original theatrical because the original theatrical is 117 minutes, and the director's cut is 116 minutes. Um, but now I will be going over the changes that were put back, or the scenes that were put back into the director's cut. That were obviously missing from the theatrical. The first scene is the transmission. So after everyone is waking up and after the breakfast scene, they go to the bridge and Lambert plays the transmission that they got from the planet. Um, um, as a continuation from the breakfast scene, I think it's a very good scene because obviously you see um, Ripley still going at it, his coffee or her coffee, and Dallas chewing something like maybe like a piece of gum or something, or maybe some leftover food from the breakfast scene. But in terms of the actual film, I think this was actually kind of a misstep to put this back in. Um, well, again, if they put this in the original theatrical version, I don't think it would have worked out that well. But I'm glad that we actually had it for this director's cut so that we can obviously see both versions. Um, but I don't think this was a. I think this was an okay change, but I don't think this should have been in the theatrical cut, and I could kind of see why they took it out. Um, the next scene I want to quickly talk about is Kane's weapon. So obviously, this is kind of like where we're gonna go into the spoiler territory here. So buckle your seatbelts and prepare. Obviously, before we go into favorite scenes. Um, so when when Kane, Dallas, and Lambert all go down to the planet, and go into the alien ship that they find, and obviously Kane is lowered into uh, a burnt section of the ship. He finds the eggs, and he goes down there to and he inspects one of the eggs. It opens up, and obviously in the theatrical version, it opens up, and or like well, actually no, it makes like a gas noise, and then in the director's cut, he actually pulls out a small little weapon, and it puts it back, and then the egg opens up. He goes in closer, and then the face hugger goes in, or launches out for the initial scare. I think I actually really like this change, and I really wish this was actually in the theatrical cut because really the actual scene of him with the weapon is only like like 5 to 10 seconds long. Um, so I really don't think it was like I don't really get why they took it out of the theatrical cut anyway. Um, but it gives that like at least Kane wasn't that stupid of just going towards this thing and inspecting it and thinking that everything was gonna be okay. At least he was like, okay, maybe I should defend myself a bit, and obviously lowers the weapon down, and the scene continues normally. But it's cool that they actually showed that the crew is taking some precautions with this. Um, the next scene is Lambert confronts Ripley. So obviously after Ash has defied Ripley's order to not bring them on because they could infect the rest of the crew. And Dallas and Ash are trying to figure out what this thing is that has attached to Kane's face. It's obviously the face hugger. But before we actually get to we can continue with the rest of the scene, or because they initially crack his helmet open to see what this thing is, and obviously they reveal the face hugger, and then after that, um, it cuts to a shot of uh, Lambert, um, Lambert, Parker, and Brett standing out looking for a window. Ripley comes down to see what's going on, and Lambert confronts Ripley by basically slapping her in the face and calling her a bitch. Um, for, I mean, it's understandable because it just seemed like that Ripley was gonna leave them out there to die. Um, because of this thing that's on one of the crewmates' face, it could potentially infect the rest of the crew. So she was just willing on letting them die out there. Um, I think this is a good change, but in terms of actually if this should have been in the theatrical cut, I could see why. Um, I could see why it was taken out, and it probably shouldn't have been in the film. But at least it's good that they put it back into this director's cut. Um, the next kind of change that we have for the director's cut is Ripley's trust. So obviously in the scene when she's talking to Dallas in the corridor, there was actually a line cut out from the director's cut of her talking about how she doesn't trust Ash. Um, and it's very kind of um, um, well, it it kind of like in terms of the actual cut, it kind of just seems kind of abrupt. How they're going from basically kind of yelling at each other to being kind of very calm. Whereas in the theatrical cut, um, as Ripley is talking about how she doesn't trust Ash, they kind of both calm down a bit, and then um, the scene continues from the director's cut onwards about how Dallas is asking, how the engine's coming in and stuff like that. But I think this is honestly a bad change for the director's cut. But again, it is the director's cut. At least it was still in the theatrical. So again, at least it's comparison. At least it's in one version and not in the other, so that we can actually kind of compare both of them. The next difference I want to talk about is Brett's death, which is the first real appearance of the alien. We already kind of saw it in the chest burster scene, but this is the first full-on appearance of the alien. Um, and it obviously, um, it cracks Brett's skull open and carries him up into the ducts. Now, in the regular theatrical version, the alien attacks Brett and lifts him up, and it just cuts to the shot of Jonesy, and then it cuts to a different scene of Parker talking about how he saw it. Now, if you are initially watching this, if you're watching the theatrical version, it's like, well, how did he see um how did he know what the alien looked like or how big it is? Well, thankfully, in the director's cut, it is changed. So after Brett is taken up into the air ducts by the alien, Parker and Brett become rushing in, trying to save Brett. But they find him gone, and they both of them look up, and Parker is splashed by blood. And then it cuts to the shot of Jonesy, and then it continues on to the next scene. And even though there is a little bit of continuity error from obviously the drops of blood dropping on Parker in at the end of Brent's death to cutting to the next scene, he's not covered in blood, but yet he still tells them that he's like this thing is huge, like it's massive, it's like this, it's the size of a person, um and um I could look over that continuity error just because it works in terms of the context of the film, where it's like maybe when Parker looked up and right before he had the blots of, the blood start dripping on him, maybe he caught like a slight glimpse of the alien as I went into the ducts and saw how massive this thing was. Um, um, so I personally think, for me, the ending, like really nothing has changed with the actual death. It's just like how the scene ends. There's still a lot of actual footage that hasn't been included in either cuts of the film when where basically Brett's head is basically where the alien doesn't exactly punctured it with his with the second mouth. The alien just kind of squishes his head, um, and then his second mouth kind of goes for the attack, and then he gets lifted up. It's a lot more gory than it is in both versions that we now eventually have, and I believe it is actually on the deleted scenes and extended scenes section of the Blu-ray. Um, Next up we have the Cocoon, which is basically after Ripley has. I believe this is after she sets off the self-destruct for the Nostromo, and she's wandering around, and she finds. She goes into the room. Um, she walks into a room, and she finds, um, basically like the aliens like saliva all around this room, and she looks over to a corner, and she finds Dallas in an egg, still alive, and like obviously you can't see, but you can see his mouth moving, like trying to gasp for air, and then she looks over to another side, and she sees Brett. Already, it looks like Brett's in a, or it looks like he was in a cocoon. But it looks like Dallas is in the infancy of him transforming into an egg. Um, and he starts uttering the words "kill me," which, if you guys are fans of the Alien franchise and have seen the sequel, you guys know that a very similar scene in this film kind of acts out the same way. Um, Now, I think the scene by itself is great. But in terms of actually adding it to the film, kind of actually causes a problem. Um, in terms of the whole Alien series, because you got Alien released in 1979. We only have the original theatrical cut, and now we have Aliens, which kind of now introduced the idea of a cocoon, or like a hive for the aliens, and for them to store humans. And obviously we get Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection. And then we obviously get the Alien vs Predator movies, which we don't talk about, and the Prometheus. Well, actually no, we get Alien vs Predator, um, and then now we get the director's cut for Alien, and Ridley Scott going back in and adding that scene to his original film kind of just seems like a fuck you to the Alien fans. Slightly. I don't know how exactly to explain it, but it just seems like a bit of a douchey move to kind of just add that scene back in after you've had Aliens kind of already introduce the idea of the cocoon. Um, but yeah. But I think by itself, I think the scene works fine. And I think, honestly, I'm glad that it's in the director's cut so that we can see it in HD. But I'm like, why did you add it to the director's cut in the first place? Because now you just kind of messed up the whole mythos for the Alien series. Um, but that's just me. But it seems like actually a lot of people like this, like actually kind of agree with me where they like the scene by itself, but it just seems like, as a whole, it kind of just seems like a big fu to the Alien fans. but I need to move on to the final scene. Um, and finally, the final difference between the director's cut and the theatrical version is when obviously now it's like, okay, the stuff that took is gonna go off. There's no going back now. Um, and she accidentally leaves Jonesy. Uh, and the alien and Jonesy, who is still in like a box, have like kind of this short encounter where the alien kind of just looks at it and then kind of just whaps it out of the way, and then the scene continues as normal. Um, I really I really hope that that cat got a paycheck. Um, because I feel really sad for that cat because you see that cat the cage the cage thing go flying. And you're just like, well, I really hope that cat got like was okay after they filmed that shot. Um, but yeah, and um, um, there has been some theories going around due to this scene being added back into the director's cut about what if like Jonesy and the alien at this point are having like a psychic connection with each other, and they're just talking to each other, and it's just like, well, no, not really. It just seems like I don't really know honestly. It just seems like again, the fans can do whatever they want. I'm not gonna argue with that. But it just seems like why would the cat and the alien have some kind of psychic connection where they kind of communicate with each other? Um, you look up the theories online and crap like that. Um, but I just find it a whole bunch of BS. Um, and yeah, that's really all the changes that were made between the theatrical cut and the director's cut of Alien. Um, and now we're gonna be talking about my personal favorite scenes um from Alien, and I'm just gonna say it right now. Honestly, most of my favorite scenes are like most of the deaths in the movie. Um, Starting from Kane's death. I mean, the chest burster is like one of the most iconic scenes in horror history. Um, where like they're having their last meal before they go back into hypersleep, and then Kane all of a sudden starts choking, and then he falls onto the table, and everyone's like trying to figure out like how to help him, like what the hell is going on, and sprout like a little sprout of blood just like shoots out of his chest, and like everything kind of stops for a second, and he starts like jerking around again, and it's like everyone's like, okay, just hold him down, and then, bam, just like the thing just comes out and just, and like you guys could obviously look the scene up on YouTube, but I think knowing that the actors didn't know that the blood was good, there was gonna be so much blood like squirting out, like kind of towards the actors, makes the genuine fear on their faces look believable because it's actually like there. It's like actual true terror, and they don't even have to act. Um, and it's just amazing. Bread stuff as well. Really, it doesn't really matter which version you watch, whether it's either in the theatrical cut or the extended cut. Um, the scene as a whole is very suspenseful, where Brett is just looking around for the cat. He finally finds him, and then the alien just jumps down, and Brett turns around. He just sees it, and without any hesitation, the alien just opens up his mouth, and then the second goes whoosh, and he just carries him up into the air ducts, and that's basically it. Um, just that scene as a whole is fantastic. Um, and I think, because you don't really see Dallas die. Well, I guess you could kind of count. in the theatrical cut that Dallas died at in the corridor scene, or like in the air duct scene. Um, but obviously in the director's cut, they obviously had the cocoon scene where it shows that he's still alive, and um, Ripley obviously torches the whole area, which I forgot to mention this earlier when I was actually talking about the cocoon scene. But my other fun fact that I was gonna mention was that when they were filming that scene, Sigourney Weaver was almost killed because she's obviously firing the flamethrower, and they obviously don't want to set the set on fire. So they have like a mirror, like just off to the side of the camera, so that when she fires the flamethrower, it just hits the mirror and doesn't catch the whole set on fire. Because what if they need to do multiple takes? So she starts firing the flamethrower, and I don't think the shot is in the film, but in one of the takes, she's firing the flamethrower. It hits the mirror, and it basically rebounded back and almost hit Sigourney Weaver. And like right after the call cut, Ridley Scott fired um, the visual effects guy, like, or the special effects guy on the spot, because you almost just killed your lead actress. Um, and then they just continued filming for the rest of they continued shooting for the rest of the scene. Um, but yeah, and that the initial actual like air duct sequence is also very suspenseful. Um, and I love that scene where he's just like I don't know where it is, and Lambert's like, okay, it's right on top of you, get out, go. And Parker, I mean not Parker, Davos goes down a flight of stairs, and he starts shining a light, and it just turns, and the alien is just sitting there, and he shines a light at it, it and he's gone. Um, Parker's death I think is amazing. Lambert's death I like, and to a point. Um, well, actually, I don't. I like the scene, but also I hate it because like you Parker obviously gets killed trying to defend Lambert, and Lambert's just standing there, and you see the alien's tail gonna go through the legs, up, and then it cuts away, and you just get 15 seconds of her screaming, and then gargling, and then a few more seconds of screaming, and then it just stops, and then you don't really see what happens, and so but you still don't really see what happens, um, and but then Ripley finds the room, and you just see Lambert's head or her hand and her foot, and Parker's just hunched over on the side. So now it's just like down to Ripley. But if I had to pick a scene that wasn't an actual like death sequence of one of the main characters, I think for me, honestly, my favorite scene would be the final confrontation between Ripley and the alien in the shuttle, where she opens up the door, and the alien just is like gets like launched out and manages to grab on, and Ripley has the harpoon gun or the spear gun, just shoots, and then the alien goes flying. She lets go, but the gun manages to get caught in the door, so that the alien manages to get back on, and it goes stupidly into one of the ignitions, and then Ripley just hits the button, and it just basically fries the alien. Um, and it's just like, like that was cool. Um, um, but yeah. Really quickly before I get on to my final rating, I did say earlier that I think Alien is a very good movie, but I do have problems with it. Uh, and it mostly just comes down to character decisions. Like, why? Like, the biggest one for me is why when Kane, Dallas, and Lambert all goes to the alien ship. I get that like they want to see where they see the ship, and it's like, okay, that must be the ship that sent out the quote unquote distress call. But if you see a floorboard that's been melted by acid You shouldn't go down there. Like, that's like number one in like what you shouldn't do in any horror movie. And yet, Kane just is like, all right, lower me down, and he gets lowered down. It's like, well, you basically just set yourself to die. And it just that didn't really affect my personal opinion about the whole movie, but it's just like, why would you do that? And now you just got face suckered, dumbass. And then other decisions that would come up later in the film, where I'm just like, oh my god, you could have easily just done this to get out of that situation. Um, but again, they're just. I'm really just nitpicking now. This film is still great, but honestly, the main that main thing that I mentioned earlier about Kane kind of diminished the quality a bit. Where I'm just like, okay, well, is it gonna kind of be the same? And it kind of was the same for like other characters, and but I still think overall this is a great movie. So, um, I'm gonna give Alien 1979 an 8 out of 10. I still think, I think that this is a great horror movie. That if anyone's trying to get into the horror, genre, I think one of the first films you should start off with is Alien to kind of get yourself, you know, used to the horror, um, kind of get used to the horror genre and see if you would like anything else. If you want to check it out even more. All right, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, this review for this week of Halloween, my first annual Halloween special. And next week will obviously be Halloween, and I thought, might as well for my first annual Halloween special, might as well end this year for Halloween, or this year October, with the 31st of October, me reviewing Halloween and Halloween 2. I thought it would be the perfect way to end off this year's Halloween special, because these two invented the slasher genre, and ironically, and these both have Halloween in the name. Um, and no, I would not be talking about Rob Zombie's versions. Maybe if I really feel like torturing myself, maybe in a future Halloween special, where if like the whole series, like the whole month would just be Halloween movies. But might as well do the two best out of the franchise, Halloween and Halloween 2. So stay tuned for next week, guys, where I'm going to be reviewing John Carpenter's Halloween and Halloween 2. Well, see you guys later. Live long and prosper. Out.